The question I've been asking myself is, why do people in the present feel superior to people in the past? We look back at the past and we see all their problems. We wonder why they couldn't see them, or we see that they didn't want to. But why do we have this superiority? I suppose, in one sense, we're alive and they are not, or the past is not. But I don't think that's sufficient. I want to know why. And of course, first off, those of us who are living live in a context. So I'm speaking about this issue of why we feel superior to people in the past, or actions in the past. And it's almost automatic. But we never put them in the context of a full life. We don't feel the air around them. We don't eat the food they eat. We don't defecate and urinate. We don't see them doing that, and yet they do. They had to. And they lived in a context. I mean, the amazing part of it is that even though they didn't have all the stuff that we have, they still were very political animals, and they were sophisticated in ways that we couldn't probably duplicate if we were dropped in there by a time machine, whatever it might be. We can look back, we feel superior. We feel superior in a variety of ways. Technologically superior. We can move around. Transportation is much faster and worldwide. I mean, if we just look back 170 years to the time of the Civil War in the United States, it was horse and buggy. It was horses. You can move about 10 miles a day. And so in a place like Indiana, when it was settled with towns about every 10 miles, because you needed to have a trading place that close. We don't need that anymore. And so we're all in these huge cities, a long way from each other, relatively. And the small towns continue to exist, in spite of the concentration of life that we have. But why do we feel superior to what was going on back then? Morally superior. That is, all this stuff with woke and not woke, and all of that is really about our moral superiority of people looking in the past. And we even see people who are racist or prejudiced in any particular way, and we see them as stuck in the past. And often people feel a moral superiority to that. Oh, look at that old man, he is stuck. But why do we feel we are superior to those who have lived before us? And yet those people were reacting to their everyday life in ways that are pretty similar to ours. I mean, they're not technologically similar. I'm speaking to an iPhone here, which I will then I can broadcast to other people if they. But why? Well, okay. If you just take a historical example, I've heard people talk about the time when Neville Chamberlain went to meet Adolf Hitler, and he went to meet him because he didn't want to go to war. And he didn't want to go to war because his country was not ready to do that in any way, shape, or form. They had been through the First World War, and war revolted them, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. We understand that kind of thing at that level, that policy level. Although I've heard conservatives talk about the kind of activity which Nemelin was, he was placating Hitler. Well, what choice did he have? I mean, he was bound by so many things. He was representing his country as best he could. Hitler, on the other hand, was a dictator and was moving to impose his will upon the world. As it turned out, the extreme view, which was Winston Churchill's view of Hitler, was the correct view. But the appeasement policy of Chamberlain was really the only thing he could really do politically if he wanted to continue to be the prime minister. Of course, he appeased, and then Hitler took advantage, and that was that. Chamberlain was out, as he should have been. He wasn't really... Franklin Roosevelt at the same time was dealing with very much the same attitude of his. The United States was very much in America First attitude. They did not want to have anything to do with any more European wars. They had done that, and they did not wish to. So the Congress pretty much bound the hands of Franklin Roosevelt, but Roosevelt knew that war was coming. And so he did what he could to prepare the country, even though it was going policy-wise against the Democratic situation. It was Republicans, but it was they were in the majority, and the only reason Franklin Roosevelt had a majority in the Congress at the time, but it wasn't a majority he could do anything about the Europeans. He just couldn't, because there was bipartisan agreement that we did not want to go to war. We want to sit behind our oceans and be safe. The Japanese blew that one away, and for some strange reason, Hitler declared war after the Japanese had declared war. The point is that the historical problem is that we in the present, the only thing that any of us ever have is the present. I mean, when we talk about history, we are talking about our fantasies about what went on before. Now, those fantasies, some of them are quite elaborate and fairly accurate, but some of them are just bizarre and way off the mark. Some of them are mythological. They express a truth, but it's not the truth, the reality of truth. It just depends. And of course, the 20th century, with Einstein and the other theoretical physicists, they developed the idea of relativity, meaning the position of the observer is very important. You're going to see something different. even though it's the same activity. So we've got that. But we also have our technological superiority, if we want to think of it that way, although we sometimes dig up archaeologically cities and situations that appear to be much more sophisticated than we expected. Those people had running water. Wow. They had sewage. Wow. Who knew? And that was thousands of years ago. The point is, we feel superior to those people in the past, but we're not. They had the same kind of dilemmas that we have. They had to look at the present and make decisions. And those decisions could be right, they could be wrong, they could be what? We, of course, know what some of those decisions are. We have documentation of some of what people were thinking, but only bits and pieces. It's a little better now that pretty much literacy is more or less universal, less at the lesser than it should be, but is so that everybody can sort of read and write, and of course now we have video, so we can hear and see things that inform us about our life and our situation. Well, I just am posing the question, why do we feel superior to those in the past? It's because we only seen them in one dimension. We have technology we think is superior. We abstract the life of people in the past. We take them out of their context of the present, and we only get a fragmented record of their particular life. And then we make judgments, you know. I mean, Lord help us if somebody, we're looking at war and there's a group of people that don't want a war. I remember this very distinctly. When Desert Storm was coming along and Kuwait had been attacked by Saddam Hussein and the Iraqis, I remember, I think it was, I can't say now, but I remember this analogy was they were calling the people who were against the war appeasers. They were going to appease Saddam Hussein by letting him stay in Kuwait. Well, yeah, not really. That's a misreading. Most of us didn't want that war, but it happened anyway, and Saddam Hussein had no business in Kuwait, and he made a mess, or his army made a mess. Anyway, so why do we feel superior to those who lived before?